Tessie was a restless animal the night I arrived, its black waves clawing at the rocks as if they wanted to tear the lighthouse from its perch and drag it into the abyss. I had been told the place was abandoned, a relic from another century when ships still needed its beam to guide them through the fog. Now it stood as a monument to solitude, a tower of stone and iron that had watched storms rise and fall for generations. I came because I wanted silence, 2 nights away from the world, 2 nights to hear nothing but the sea and the wind. But silence is never empty. Silence has a way of filling itself with things you don't want to hear. The door groaned when I pushed it open, the sound echoing up the spiral staircase, like a warning. Dust lay thick on the floor, disturbed only by the faint outline of footprints that didn't belong to me. I told myself they were old, left by some caretaker years ago, but the edges were sharp, the dust not yet settled back into place. I carried my lantern up the stairs, each step ringing hollow, the air growing colder as I climbed. At the top, the lantern room stretched around me, glass panes streaked with salt, the great lens standing like a frozen eye. I set my bag down and tried to laugh at myself. 2 nights, I thought, 2 nights of wind and waves, and then I would leave with nothing but a story about how empty the world can be. But the world is never empty. That first night, the wind pressed against the glass like a living thing, and the sea roared below. But beneath it all, I heard something else, a rhythm, a sound that did not belong to storm or tide. It was the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, climbing the stairs I had just climbed. I froze, lantern in hand, listening. The steps rose, one by one, until they stopped just below the trapdoor. I waited for the door to open. It never did. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. When I finally dared to look, the stairs were empty, the shadows deep, the silence heavier than before. I told myself it was the wind, the sea, the old bones of the lighthouse shifting in the storm. But when I lay down to sleep, I dreamed of eyes watching me from the dark corners of the room, eyes that did not blink. The second night was worse. The storm had passed, leaving the sea slick and black, the horizon a knife edge of fading light. I thought the calm would bring peace, but calm is only another kind of silence, and silence is never empty. I walked the tower, tracing the walls with my hand, and found carvings etched into the stone. Names, dates, words half erased by time. Some were pleas, "Don't let me stay." Others were warnings, "It watches." My lantern flickered as I read them, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow move across the wall, though there was nothing between me and the flame. That night, the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like the sea curling into the cracks of the stone. But soon they grew clearer, voices overlapping, speaking words I could not understand. They came from the stairwell, from the walls, from the very air around me. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the voices only grew louder inside my head. I stumbled to the lantern room, hoping the great glass eye would protect me. But when I looked out across the sea, I saw a figure standing on the rocks below. It was too far to see clearly, but I knew it was watching me. Primera turned to why heart pounding, and when I looked again, the rocks were empty. I did not sleep that night. I sat with my lantern burning low, listening to the whispers, watching the shadows shift. At some point, I realized the whispers were not random. They were calling my name. The third night should never have come, but time in the lighthouse was not like time outside. Hours stretched and folded, the sun rising and setting without meaning. I no longer knew if I had been there 2 nights or 20. The air was heavy with salt and something else, something like breath. I felt it on my neck when I walked, a presence just behind me, always just out of sight. I tried to leave, but the door at the base of the tower would not open. The wood was swollen, the lock rusted, or perhaps it was simply that the lighthouse did not want me to go. I climbed back up, each step heavier than the last, until I reached the lantern room again. The glass panes were black now, as if the sea and sky had vanished, leaving only void. And in that void, I saw faces. Dozens of Tim pressed against the glass, their mouths open in silent screams. I stumbled back, but the faces followed, shifting with me, their eyes fixed on mine. The whispers rose to a roar, and I realized they were not outside me anymore. They were inside, filling my chest, my throat, my skull. I dropped the lantern, and the flame went out. Darkness swallowed the room, and in that darkness, something moved. It was not a shadow, because shadows need light. It was not a man, because men need breath. It was something else, something that had been waiting in the silence all along. It reached for me, and I understood then what the carvings meant, what the voices had been saying. The lighthouse does not guide ships. It keeps them away. It is not a beacon, it is a prison. And I was never alone. I tried to tell myself that the darkness was only darkness, that the silence was only silence. But the longer I stayed inside that tower, the more I realized the place was alive in ways I could not explain. The walls breathed, the air pulsed, and the shadows seemed to lean closer whenever I turned my back. I lit another lantern after the first had died, but the flame sputtered as if it too was afraid to burn in that place. I thought of the figure I had seen on the rocks, the way it had stood so still, as though it had been waiting for me to notice. I told myself it was a trick of the light, but the memory of its posture, its certainty, would not leave me. I descended the stairs, each step echoing like a drumbeat, and halfway down I felt the air shift. It was colder, heavier, as though something unseen had passed me by. I froze, lantern raised, but the stairwell was empty. Still, I could not shake the feeling that something had brushed against my shoulder. Something that left behind a chill that sank into my bones. At the base of the tower I tried the door again, pulling until my hands ached, but it would not move. The lock rattled, the hinges groaned, but the wood held fast. I pressed my ear against it, and for a moment I thought I heard the sea, but it was not the sea. It was breathing, slow, steady, just on the other side. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and nearly dropped the lantern. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. I climbed again, faster this time, as though the thing outside might force its way in if I lingered too long. When I reached the lantern room, the glass panes were no longer black. Te were as though the sea and sky had been drowned in blood. I pressed my hand against the glass, and it was warm, pulsing faintly, like the skin of some enormous creature. I staggered back, and in the reflection of the glass I saw myself, but not myself. The figure in the reflection was smiling, though my lips were not. Its eyes were hollow, its skin pale, and when I raised my hand, it did not follow. It only stared, grinning wider until the glass cracked beneath its face. I fell to the floor, clutching the lantern, and when I looked again, the glass was whole, the sea black once more. But the reflection lingered in my mind, a parasite burrowing deeper with every breath. That night, the whispers returned, louder than before, and this time I understood them. They were not calling my name. They were telling me to stay. They spoke of the others who had come before me, the keepers who had vanished, the travelers who had sought shelter and never left. Their voices overlapped, a chorus of despair, and I realized the carvings on the walls were not warnings. They were confessions. Each name, each plea, was a mark left by someone who had tried to resist and failed. I pressed my hands against the stone, feeling the grooves of their words, and for a moment I thought I felt fingers pressing back from the other side. I stumbled away, lanterns swinging wildly, shadows leaping across the walls. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to run to. The tower was endless, the stairs winding forever, the door sealed, the windows blind. I was trapped in a place that was not a place, a time that was not a time. The lighthouse was not built to guide ships. It was built to hold something inside, and now it held me, too. I tried to sleep, but sleep would not come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faces in the glass, the reflection that was not mine, the figure on the rocks. I heard the breathing at the door, the footsteps on the stairs, the whispers in the walls. I felt the weight of the tower pressing down on me, as though it were sinking into the earth, dragging me with it. At some point, I realized I was no longer alone in the room. I did not see it at first, but I felt it. a presence standing just beyond the edge of the lantern's glow. I forced myself to look, and there it was, a shape, tall and thin, its body shifting like smoke, its face hidden in shadow. It did not move, but I knew it was watching me. I tried to speak, to demand what it wanted, but my voice broke into a whisper. The thing tilted its head, and though I could not see its eyes, I felt them pierce through me. Then it was gone, dissolving into the dark, leaving only the echo of its gaze. I sat there until the lantern burned out, and when the flame died, I did not relight it. I let the darkness take me, because fighting it was worse. In the dark, I heard the sea again, but this time it was not outside. It was inside the walls, inside my chest, crashing and roaring until I could not tell where I ended and the lighthouse began. I realized then that I was becoming part of it. Another voice in the chorus, another face in the glass. The thought should have terrified me, but it did not. It felt inevitable, like Tida. You cannot fight the tide. You can only let it take you. You do not know when the night ended, or if it ever did. The lighthouse had swallowed the sun, and time itself had become another prisoner within its walls. I wandered the spiral stairs, up and down, until I no longer knew whether I was climbing or descending. The stone beneath my hands pulsed faintly, like veins carrying blood. And sometimes I thought I heard a heartbeat echoing through the tower, slow and steady, as though the building itself was alive. My lantern had long since died, but I no longer needed it. The darkness was not empty anymore. It was full, brimming with shapes and faces that revealed themselves in the corner of my vision. They whispered to me, not in words, but in feelings, memories that were not mine, pressing into my skull until I could not tell where I ended. And they began. I saw flashes of men in oilskinned coats, their eyes hollow, their mouths open in silent screams. I saw women clutching children, their bodies broken on the rocks below, their souls dragged into the tower's walls. I saw keepers scratching their names into the stone, their fingernails bleeding, their voices fading into the chorus that now filled my head. And through it all, I felt the presence, the same one that had stood in the lantern room, the same one that had smiled at me through the glass. It was closer now, always just behind me, its breath cold on my neck, its shadow stretching longer than mine. I tried to run, but every stair led me back to the same place. The lantern room, the great glass eye, staring out into nothing. The panes were no longer black or red, but clear, and beyond them I saw the sea, calm and endless, as though nothing had ever been wrong. For a moment I thought I was free, that the nightmare had ended, but then I saw the reflection again. It was waiting for me, grinning wider than before, its eyes hollow pits that seemed to stretch forever. I raised my hand, and this time it did not mimic me. It reached through the glass, its fingers pressing against the surface until cracks spread like I stumbled back, but there was nowhere to go. The glass shattered, and the figure stepped through, its body made of shadow and smoke, its face a mask of my own twisted into something monstrous. It spoke without speaking, its voice inside my head, telling me what I had already begun to understand. I was never meant to leave. The lighthouse had chosen me, as it had chosen all the others, and now I was part of it. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the chorus of voices, my own joining theirs, rising and falling like the tide. The figure reached for me, and when its hand touched my chest, I felt my heart stop. For a moment there was silence, true silence, and then I was no longer standing in the lantern room. I was in the glass, pressed against it like the faces I had seen before, my mouth open in a scream that no one would ever hear. Outside, the sea rolled on, indifferent, and the lighthouse stood tall against the horizon, its beams sweeping across the waves. To any ship that passed, it would look like a beacon, a guide, a promise of safety. But I knew the truth. The light was not meant to guide. It was meant to lure. And when the sailors looked up at the tower, they would see nothing but stone and glass. They would not see the faces trapped within, the eyes that watched them hungrily, the souls that whispered for company. They would not see me, but I would see them. I would watch them as they passed, waiting for the next storm, the next traveler, the next fool who thought they could spend 2 nights alone in the lighthouse. Alone. No one is ever alone here. The shadows never leave. The darkness always speaks, and the lighthouse always watches back.